Hello, everybody, and welcome to our third video in this series on covenant. And we are working our way through the major covenants of the Old Testament. Our first video was to introduce the whole series and to discuss what covenant is just in general. And then last time, part two, we looked at the first major covenant of the Old Testament, which was the covenant made between God and Adam, and by extension, Eve as well. And so just by way of review, here we have Adam, pretty good looking figure there, I must say, stick figure, after all, can't do much with stick figures. And we captured a couple of elements, symbols contained here that symbolize different elements of Adam's character. So Adam as a son of God, hence the beams of radiance that come from Adam's face. Adam as a king, okay, the crown, so he has stewardship and charge of creation. Adam as prophet, so he is singing here. Adam as a prophet when he names the animals, okay, kind of speaking on God's behalf, which is what prophets do. And then Adam as priest, this symbolized by the purple stole. All right, so Adam offers, the sacrifice and is a sacrifice and serves in that priestly function. And then Adam as spouse, his wedding ring here. Hard to see on the video there, but he's wearing a wedding ring, and so Adam as spouse. I review that because as we go along, we're going to see almost exactly this same figure again later on, but it won't be Adam. So we'll see these elements are aspects of each of us in our relationship with God, and therefore have something to say and pertain to our own covenantal relationship with God. And then elements of the first covenant over here. So we are in Eden. Remember, there's 4 parts to every covenant in the Old Testament, according to, as I mentioned, my main source, John Bergsma, Bible Basics for Catholics. And there's 4 things present. There is the promise that is made, okay, on either side. There is the sign of the covenant itself, okay. There is the ritual that is performed to make the covenant happen, and then there's the location of where all this happens, which is a mountain. So the mountain of Eden, which we gather, according to John Bergsma, we gather is at least an elevated place, insofar as river runs down from it. A river runs down from it and splits into 4 rivers, 2 of which still exist, and we know what they are today: the Tigris and the Euphrates, which are in present-day Iraq. Okay, the sign of this covenant is the tree of life. The promise is that God will make them, everlasting in life, and make them stewards of creation. But their side of the promise is that they will not eat of the tree of the Garden of Good and Evil. And then the ritual was, the statement of the rules, as we said. Okay, so remember the mountain. The mountain is going to look familiar as we go along as well. Remember Adam. We'll see this figure again, though it won't be Adam. All right, so that was by way of review. All right, so we say goodbye to Adam for now. We say goodbye to Eden for now. Back to the blank slate. And our next major covenant is now with Noah. Before that, though, so the first covenant, okay, Adam, and it had to do with a couple, okay, a married couple. All right, and now Noah, it has to do with a family. And more specifically, we might say, or more completely, of couples, okay? And we'll explain that as we go along. Hopefully you can see all that. Well, my handwriting's terrible, so good luck trying to make sense of all that. But Adam and Eve, okay, a covenant was made with a couple. The covenant made with Noah, as we'll see, is not just made with Noah and his wife, but with their 3 sons and with their wives. So a whole family of couples. The covenant grows. It has not changed insofar as it's like been completely thrown out and replaced. It has changed insofar as it has grown, just as an acorn changes when it becomes the sprout of a tree. Okay, so a covenant with Adam was with the couple, Adam and Eve, and the covenant with Noah was made with a family of couples. All right, so that will play more into our series as we go along. Okay, now before we get into the covenant, why did there have to be a covenant with Noah in the first place? Weren't things just going along just fine, hunky-dory? Well, we see actually first that there needed to be a renewed covenant, a covenant that is renewed and has grown because of the fall, because of original sin. and the madness of the world that happened because of it. So Adam and Eve ate the forbidden fruit, so the first sin, and soon thereafter, like in the very next chapter, they have their two first sons, Cain and Abel, and Cain kills Abel. So we've gone from the first sin, now we go to the first murder, and it goes from there. Okay, there's all kinds of nonsense going on and things, and all that culminates with the Tower of Babel, where human beings presumed that they could kind of grasp the greatness of God by building a tower that reaches up to the heavens. God confused the languages and said no to that. So anyway, the world is kind of not progressing but degressing from a state of original innocence and original holiness into, because of original sin, into just a deeper and deeper culture, just more deeply ensconced in the filth of sin. All right, so we're going to actually look at original sin in kind of some measured detail here. I think that will help us to understand why the covenant with Noah had to be made. So we look at the story of original sin, which, if you want to follow along, is in Genesis chapter 3. Now, there's a handy book. I have a copy, but I don't have it with me. But, okay, so Pope St. John Paul II, as many of us know, as many of us may recall, kind of started the tradition of the Wednesday audiences that popes continue to give, which really becomes an occasion for the Pope to teach the world on some subject, okay? And what Pope St. John Paul II did with his, almost from the get-go, was to start building upon what would later become called the theology of the body. So what is it about the human person that teaches us something about the nature of God? All right, so there have been many kind of takes on this. Maybe the most famous has been Christopher West, and from that we get theology of the body for teens and for youth. Okay, so a lot of folks are familiar with theology of the body because of what Christopher West has done for the American and the American continent, for the church in the West. But he's not the only one that has taken this and presented it in a new way for us to understand. It's very difficult to really dive deep into theology of the body. St. John Paul II was just so rich in his thought. It's just really hard to keep up. But another book, and it's called The Human Person. The author is Monsignor Brian Bransfield. Monsignor Bransfield, I believe, is a priest for the Archdiocese of Philadelphia, anyway, on the East Coast. Most recently, he has long time been kind of the executive director of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. And so he's done a lot in working with the bishops. And he came to Spokane one time, a couple of years ago, to kind of give a series of masterclass workshops on the theology of the body and his book, The Human Person. So much of what I'm about to present here is based on Monsignor Bransfield's book, The Human Person. In one of his chapters, he dives deep into original sin, and he sees, as chapter 3 of Genesis unfolds, that we see that sin has a procedure. There's like a sequence, and every sin does this. That's his argument. So anyway, we'll kind of look at that. And the first step of sin is division. Okay, we'll call it division. I'll try to write more clearly. Okay, or basically it's the old divide and conquer trick. Okay, divide really the family. Okay. In this case, with original sin, Adam and Eve. If you look at the first verses of Genesis, all right, of Genesis chapter 3, it's a very subtle detail, but an important detail nonetheless. I'm just bringing it up here. Now the snake was the most cunning of all the wild animals that the Lord God had made. He asked the woman, "Did God really say you shall not eat from any of the trees in the garden?" Before we even get to the serpent's question itself, he asked the woman. The serpent did not approach Adam and Eve, but only one of them, and for whatever reason chose Eve. So for some reason, somehow, the family unit of Adam and Eve has been divided. And so Satan will do that. Temptation will present itself. If we think of, like, I'm going to pick on the sin of pornography because it really plays itself out to each of these 7 steps. All right, so most people, that I can imagine that would look at pornography are not just going to sit there with the family computer in the family room during family dinner and look at pornography. Unless they're really, really sick, or the family's like really, really, really sick or whatever. they're just not going to do that. They're gonna wait until like the kids are gone to bed and the spouses whatever, or nobody's home, and then they'll go down to the computer in the basement. I mean, the division is set up to engage in that sin, but the sin hasn't been committed yet. The occasion, the setting for it has begun, though, even though the sin has not yet been committed. But division, the family unit has been divided. Okay, so, it's the bypass of the family structure, is what Monsignor Bransfield says. Okay, so sin or Satan or temptation just happens to come along as if by mere chance, like any near occasion of sin. Okay, one wonders, where was Adam? Satan goes to Eve alone. Where was Adam? So Satan bypassed the family structure and the human community to tempt Eve individually, and so we are each of us individually tempted. And everything that follows in this story of original sin, this temptation ritual, or this sequence, it's built on this first moment of isolation. So we are isolated first, and the rest follows. Satan dares to approach only after he has isolated the man from the woman. We notice this in Genesis 3. For when they are together, their bond is so profoundly and immediately rooted in the image and likeness of God that he cannot bear it and is repulsed by it. So he will not approach the two of them. He's too weak to be able to face the strength of that family unit. So he divides. Because as a family, we are more rooted in the image and likeness of God, the Imago Dei, God himself being a community of persons, just so the family. And so Satan is utterly repulsed by God, and so anything made in the image and likeness of God will strive to divide us, therefore. And so, so division, bypassing the family unit, or what I'm calling here division. And then number 2, which we also caught in that first verse, okay, is the innocent little question. I'm going to put innocent in quotes. All right, innocent. Oh, my C looks terrible. Innocent little question. Question mark. All right. What was that question? We read again. Did God really say, "You shall not eat from any of the trees in the garden"? Okay. Notice here that Satan takes God's existence for granted. Satan does not come right out to Eve and say, "God doesn't exist. You've been hallucinating this whole time. You can do what you want." No, that'd be too direct and therefore too ineffective. It's not subtle enough to really get a barb in. It's too blunt force up front, and Eve would not have fallen for that. Nobody would fall for that. If you're a believer in God, you're not going to believe it if someone comes and says God doesn't exist. Oh, really? Oh, well, I got my whole life screwed up. We don't do that. Nobody's going to be able to do that with that direct assault. So they've got to do a roundabout way to barb us from the side. And so Satan does that here. Did God really say that? Okay. The devil does not peer with this bold claim of atheism, does not argue the existence of God, as I mentioned. The primary maneuver is not to try to get us to think that God does not exist. In fact, the devil would sooner have us to believe that he, the devil, does not exist. There's a great line in a great movie called The Usual Suspects. It's a great movie. Anyway, the line goes, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. If we are convinced that Satan doesn't exist, then of course hell doesn't exist. Of course there's no consequences for the sins we choose to commit. Of course, therefore, why not just do anything we want? Because there's going to be no comeuppance. And it all started with, well, of course Satan doesn't exist. That's absurd. And the devil wants that so that we will choose to sin, be trapped in sin, die in sin, and there we're going to find him in hell grinning at us when he says to us, I fooled you and you fell for it, you sucker. All right, so the devil would sooner have us believe that he doesn't exist, but he's not going to come right out with guns blazing saying God doesn't exist. And so the innocent little question instead. So the innocent little questions entice us to commit the little sins, quote unquote. But the little sins are like training grounds for future sin, for further sin later on. They used to call marijuana the gateway drug. If you take marijuana, pretty soon you're going to want a harder drug that's going to give you a faster, more intense jolt, or whatever it is that drugs do. Okay, so the innocent little question invites us to the gateway sin. All right. And it's kind of a reverse evangelization, therefore. It feeds on our concupiscence, our tendency towards sin, to lead us away from God step by step. Whereas evangelization is step by step leading us toward God. All right, so the innocent little question skews the truth. It skews one's thinking, and that leads us up to step 3. But before we get to step 3 of the process of sin, just one more time, Did God really say you shall not eat from any of the trees in the garden? Of course, that's not what God said. God said, do not eat of the forbidden fruit, but you have the whole rest of the garden to feast from. Just this one little tree, just don't eat that fruit. All right. So the innocent little question sets us up for stage 3, which is the bold-faced lie. All right. So I'm going to just put it in big caps. Lie. Satan lies for a living. He is the prince of lies. Okay. And, we get this in the outright lie. The woman answered the question, but then Satan says, verse 4 of chapter 3, the snake said to the woman, you certainly will not die. What did God say? If you eat of the fruit of the forbidden fruit, you will certainly die. So Satan says you will not die. It's just a flat out lie. It's a direct contradiction to what God had said. And then the lie continues. God knows full well that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like gods who know good from evil. What's the irony there? Adam and Eve already were like gods. They were made, as God said, let us make mankind in our image after our likeness, and so made them. Male and female had created them. They were already made, Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, in the imago Dei. They already were the image and likeness of God. And here Satan is saying, he knows that if you eat the forbidden fruit, you will become like gods. Now, if Eve and Adam had just realized, wait a minute, this sounds familiar. God told us we already are made in his image and likeness of God. But the lie comes at the coattails of the innocent little question. And so the issue is confused. Eve is doubting herself. Eve is doubting, what did I hear that accurately? What's going on here? She's like thrown into a tizzy of confusion. And so, she has been isolated. She has no one to back her up. The innocent little question has thrown her into confusion, and now the lie just kind of knocks her right in the face. And so, in fact, step 4, which will follow obviously step 3, they're kind of a quick 1-2 punch. So the lie itself, you already are the imago Dei, but Satan's saying if you eat the forbidden fruit, you'll become like gods. A direct lie. And so, as Monsignor Brian Bransfield says, Satan is the world's worst salesman. Here, let me sell you something that you already have. Let me sell you the image and likeness of God that you want to be, but you already are in the image and likeness of God. Okay? The lie tries to convince us that we are not worthy, that we do not fit in, or that we do not belong with the in crowd. Okay, so the in crowd, what Eve really wants is to be like God, to enjoy the fullness of the blessings that come with that, and Satan has lied to her. Step 4, related with that, is the fear. Okay, there's fear, and this is why the lie is effective. This is why they're really 1-2 punch. Okay, so the fear, the same verses, again, the lie is only effective because it is followed immediately by this fear. And so what happens here with Eve? Fear is the essential ingredient in every sin. It is the marrow of temptation. Satan basically is saying this: unless you eat of the fruit, you will die. When what God said was, if you eat the fruit, you will die. And so we still hear versions of this lie. We hear, unless you do this or buy that or whatever else we are trying to manipulate you into doing, you are unpopular, you are unloved. You will die the death of ambiguity. You're just a nobody because nobody knows your name. So you better make your 15-second hilarious or controversial video on YouTube to enjoy your 15 minutes of fame. Unless you do that, your life has no accomplishment. Okay, we give in to this version of the lie again with peer pressure. Okay, that's a thing faced with kids and youth, is giving into peer pressure. Every advertisement ever created, yes, even the funny ones. Like you've noticed how many beer commercials they're always featuring crowds of people just having a great time. The implication is, unless you're drinking our beer, you won't be part of that awesome party. You're drinking some schlub beer. You're drinking no beer at all, and so you're alone, and nobody likes you. You're never at the party. So that's how advertisement works in those kinds of things. So the fear in each temptation says this: unless I have X, Y, or Z, I will die the death of not having what I want. Okay? Temptation pivots on our fears. We fear being unwanted, unloved, overlooked, being a loser, being unfulfilled. The fear at the root of all other fears is we are not enough. We're just not enough. Okay? Their television commercials, the peer pressure, the parties that they always show going on. The undergirding all of that is I don't matter. Nobody likes me. I am alone. Okay. Temptation induces us to believe that God did not, in fact, create us good, and that we must look for something else in order to be made into that goodness, that enoughness that we so desperately want. Okay, this is all what is understated in what Satan is saying here. Unless you eat of this fruit, you won't become like gods. Do this thing, and then you'll have all that you want. But unless you do, you won't have anything that you want. All right. Looks like I've reached the bottom of the screen, so we're going to erase the first division is step 1, or bypassing the family structure. The innocent little question, step 2, the lie and the fear. All right. And now step 5 of every stage of sin. Excuse me. I'll set my page down to get my pen. And here is the sin itself. Okay. It is a choice. It is an act. Notice that steps 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all aspects of the temptation presenting itself to us. But still, there is no sin. We still are still in a state of grace. We still have not stepped apart from God's love for us, okay, until the step itself. So until the sin itself, which is step 5, okay, there it is. All right, sin, okay. And what happens here? Genesis chapter 3, verse 6. The woman saw that the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eyes, and the tree was desirable for gaining wisdom. So she took some of its fruit and ate it. Okay, so this depicts the free choice and the deliberate action to disobey God. There can be no sin until we consent to whatever is being presented to us. Okay, we can be bombarded with all kinds of, mostly nude, people, whatever it is they're selling on billboards. Okay, we can be presented with, occasions for gluttony with a whole smorgasbord of every food we ever wanted. And that's all. That doesn't mean that we've sinned. It doesn't mean that we've even come close to sin. At best, it could be said that we've placed ourselves in a near occasion of sin, which still may or may not be our choice to have done that. Okay, I don't choose what billboards are on Sprague or Sullivan as I'm driving down the road. Okay, they just present themselves to me. I don't choose what advertisements are going to fling their way at me as I'm watching, the Seattle Seahawks win another game. Anyway, they just are coming our way, okay? But not until we choose to act, then sin presents itself. Then sin has been committed, okay? So breaking the law is not a mere external crossing of a line. It is a rupture in man's innermost being. That's what sin does. There's a rupture in our being. And all that preceded this, that's what the devil did. But this is ours and ours alone. We can blame no one for this. In the fall, Adam and Eve, this is what St. Augustine says, Adam and Eve lost what they had received in wanting to seize what they had not received. Okay, so this is the disobedience of original sin. And Monsignor Bransfield in his book emphasizes that, look at, with free will, the free will and the love attached to that, for which and by which and in which and to which we were created. Okay, by love, for love, and to love. There's two movements. We can give and we can receive when someone else gives to us. We can give and we can receive. What Adam and Eve attempted to do was take. But this was not an action that was allowed for them. This is a third way that the devil tempted them to attempt. Okay? And the image that Monsignor Bransfield gives is like the elbow joint. The elbow has only two movements: extend and retract, extend and retract. But if I try to now I've broken my elbow. Now it can't do anything because I tried to force a third way. And this is why arm wrestlers often break their arms, because they're trying to bend their elbow into a way that's not natural. Okay? If they do that, now they've been broken. They've been ruptured in their very being. And because of that rupture, now they can neither give nor receive, because the elbow joint is completely broken. That's what happens when we sin. Okay, so any attempt to seize, to take, that attempt and that action, it wounds our capacity to give and to receive. And the created order is an order of gift and reception, and an act of taking or seizing violates gift and reception. Okay, step 5 was sin. But still, there's two more steps here. What happens after we sin? Okay, so going back to I'm picking on the sin of pornography, and I mentioned we bypass the family structure. The innocent little question: well, would it really be so bad if I just click on this website and just click on that website? What is it really so bad? I mean, what's the harm? No one's getting hurt here. It's a very private sin. The flat out lie that unless you do this, you will not be satisfied the way you want to be. Okay, okay, so and then step 4 is the fear. Unless I do that, I will be unfulfilled. Unless I do this, therefore I must do this thing to be fulfilled. And then we choose to engage in the pornography. And then step 6, we hide. All right, if whatever your medium is for looking at pornography, okay, you got to erase the computer hard drive or whatever. You got to that magazine, you got to throw it away or whatever it is. Okay, so you gotta hide the evidence. Okay, I guess we could have been talking about the example not of pornography but murder. Okay, you gotta hide the body. Okay, quick, dig a hole, throw it in, bury the hole. All right, put a tree on it so nobody knows it's there. All right, so step 6, all of that is to say step six is to hide. Okay, in sin we hide from the truth. Instead of witnessing to the truth, Adam and Eve were reduced to making up excuses and playing the infamous blame game, which comes a bit later. Man refuses to acknowledge the gift, and this is the fourfold alienation of sin from God. So when we sin, there are 4 relationships that are ruptured because of this. In effect, we have chosen to hide from these others in these other relationships. So our relationship with God is wounded. Our relationship with another is wounded. Our relationship from self. Okay, I am fractured in my very being. Okay, I don't want to admit. I can't face myself. I did that thing again. I can't believe I did that thing again. Who am I? What have I done? These kind of questions. So we've been separated from ourselves, and we're wounded from the world too. Okay, we just want to hide from the world. Okay, so step 6 is hide. And now God enters the scene in Genesis chapter 3. And God is saying, where are you? And, because they're not where they should be. Adam and Eve are not where they should be, which is in God's presence, in God's company. Because they're not there, something bad has happened. Pause. Which, by the way, where was Adam this whole time? We were wondering quietly to ourselves. So Eve took the fruit and ate it. She also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. So for whatever reason, perhaps Adam was there the whole time, just in his cowardice. Or, I can't judge, live and let live, all this, whatever was going through his head. Like, no, he saw a friend in need. He saw his wife, in need of his help. He needed to man up and step in and take that snake and fling it out of the garden. Why did the snake get in the garden anyway? He was charged with the task of guarding the garden, and he let the snake in. So Adam is just as much to blame in all this as Eve. I know some people like to pick on Eve as if she's the one, but Adam was the one too. What was he doing in all this? He was taking his siesta for some reason. All right, so anyway, they both have sinned. They're both not with God. And so now step 7, now we start playing the blame game. All right, so blame. Okay, let's pick on pornography again. Okay, oh, why did I pick on pornography? Oh, if only my spouse would just pay attention to me, or just want to have relations with me, or whatever it is, or we want to make excuses. That's another way of playing the blame game. Oh, well, I was just lonely, or I was just frustrated. I needed to vent. I needed some kind of venting mechanism, or whatever the case is. But we blame, we make excuses. Read Genesis chapter 3, verses 10 through 13. Adam blames Eve and God. Let's read what that is all about. God said, "Who told you that you were naked?" Adam said, "We were afraid, so we hid ourselves because we were naked." And God said, "You have eaten the forbidden fruit, therefore." And the man replied, "The woman whom you put here with me, she gave me fruit of the tree, so I ate it." Notice that subtle double blame. The woman whom you, God, you put here with me. I didn't ask for her, but you put her with me, so this is technically your fault and hers. All right, so he plays the double blame game, and Eve blames the serpent. And God supersedes blame and excuses, okay? God is having none of that, and so is going to correct the situation, and even now start to point toward the hope to the future. Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, okay? This is when he's talking to Eve, and when he's talking to the serpent about Eve. "I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. All right. This is known as the proto-evangelion. There's a $5 word for you for the week, huh? Proto meaning first, evangelion, good news, evangelization, okay, gospel. The euangelium, okay, so the first good announcement, the first good news, but pointing already to the way out of this. We got ourselves immersed neck deep in our sin, but the way out of this, here's how it begins. The woman will be at constant enmity with you, the serpent, and her offspring with your offspring. And he will strike at your head while you strike at their heel. All right, so we start to find that there's a way out of this, and God has intervened. All right, so anyway, until we get Christ on the cross, what we have therefore is we're prepping the groundwork for this, and we're leading ourselves up to this, and now we get the next covenant that starts to build toward the culmination of all the covenants, which is, as I already said, spoiler alert, Christ on the cross. Okay, so the Noahic covenant, or the covenant made with Noah, due to the utter wickedness of humanity, and God had found only Noah and his wife, their 3 sons and their 3 wives, so 8 people in all. They were the remnant of the faithful. The rest, not so much. The utter wickedness of humanity, because of one original sin, just permeated outward, okay, and infected everybody. And now creation is plunged back into formlessness and void by the flood. In effect, some people say, why didn't God just start over? Why didn't God just take Adam and Eve and just, put them aside and just start over? Well, God did. Instead of Adam and Eve, we got Noah and Noah's wife and their 3 sons and their wives. Okay, so God did start over. It's called the flood. All right, so we're going to draw this covenant now. It's going to start to look pretty familiar, I think, in parts. Okay, so we know the story. For 40 days and nights, the rains fall. Before that, Noah built the ark. Into the ark, all the animals go. How many unclean animals? 2 of each kind. And how many clean animals? 7 pairs of each kind. That's a little known fact, but it's true. Why the clean animals? Because Adam was going to have to come right out of the ark to make sacrifices. So a lot of those clean animals fit for sacrifice are going to be offed right away. So we need enough for the sacrifice and to repopulate the earth. All right, so anyway, we have a mountain again. Only this one is called Mount Ararat. Can you see that? Oh, my handwriting is just terrible. Don't tell my mother, she'd be disappointed. All right, so we have Mount Ararat, okay, and we got the ark. So the previous one, the Mountain of Eden had the tree. So instead of the tree, we're just going to build a handy little ark here, okay. There's a little guy there, and a little porthole here, a little porthole here. Here's the dove that went out and flew away. Okay, so when the waters receded, the ark found itself on the side of Mount Ararat. Okay, that's straight out of Genesis. Okay, Genesis chapter 9. Okay, and so we've got the Ararat. We got the ark, and then the ark is opened. Okay, so the side of the ark, which we are told is how they got in. Okay, so like this, and out come the little animals. There's some snakes and things, and let's see, we'll build a horse here, okay, stick figure horse, and there's the horse's spouse, okay, yeah, you got the idea. So the animals have come out, and then what Noah had to do, okay, so he was told to build a fire, and on this fire, he was told to offer the sacrifice of the clean animals, okay, so and then here's Adam here, okay, and he's an old man, so he's got like a long beard and sparse hair, okay. So he's an old man. That's a terrible Noah. Did I say Adam? I meant Noah. All right, so we got the same things going on, but then what else do we have? Okay, the sign of the covenant. We've got a rainbow. All right, I'm missing yellow, so we're just gonna have to. All right, so that's red. I got most of the colors of the rainbow. All right, so we got orange, missing yellow, so we go straight to green. Okay, and then we've got blue here. All right, and then finally we got purple. Okay, there we go, barely cleared Noah. All right, so because of the wickedness of humanity, just plunged deeper and deeper into, almost irredeemable wickedness, that the whole world had to be flooded and a reset button had to be pushed. And the reset button was Noah and his wife and their sons and their wives, 8 people in total, and a pair of each unclean animal and 7 pairs of each clean animal. And here they come out of the ark to start the world over again. And God said, from now on, whenever I see this bow in the sky, I'll remember my covenant with you, and I will no longer just wipe out humanity with a flood. All right. So what is the promise? God makes the promise, I will no longer wipe out the world with a flood. And Noah's promise is implied that you will continue to be the remnant of the faithful. Okay, you are the new start of humanity and all that goes with that. Okay, so that's the promise on either side. The ritual is the sacrifice of some of the clean animals. Okay, hence the logs and the fire. Okay, and the mountain is Mount Ararat. Okay, the floods receded and the ark was planted on the side of the mountain. And then the sign is the rainbow. So whenever we see the rainbow in the sky, it's the idea that, when do we see rainbows? When it's clouded over, when it's raining. Okay, it's almost like, holy cow, is this rain going to keep going? God, aren't you going to turn on the off switch here so that we don't get washed away in a flood again? Oh, there's the rainbow. God remembers. Okay, so it's the sign that God is good, that there is hope, that God has not given up on humanity, and that we can proceed forward. Okay, so in summary, watching the covenant grow. The first covenant was with Adam and Eve, with a married couple. Okay, now the covenant grows; it's not replaced; it grows, and the target audience of this covenant is no longer just one married couple, but it is a whole family, a family of married couples. So the covenant has grown. The covenant of God with humanity has grown from one couple to now one family, and we're going to see this continue to grow in these incremental stages as we go along. Okay, so thus concludes part 3 of our series on covenant. Please join me next time, which should be next week. We'll have the next video made and posted, part 4 on our series of Old Testament covenants. Thank you all. Stay tuned, and God bless.